It's the weekend and you have financial questions that need answering. That can only mean one thing. It's time for Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
Welcome, welcome. It's the Jill on Money show, and we are so happy that you are joining us today. Today being the weekend for you, so it is the weekend before Thanksgiving. Boy, it does seem like time was creeping along there. It seems like every day bled into the next, and boom, here we are. It's Thanksgiving week, almost. I was asked about whether I was available for work on Friday, which, of course, is fondly known as Black Friday. I hate Black Friday. I really do. I find it to be terribly annoying. And the whole idea that we're like so hyper focused on retail again. We had a strong retail sales report. That's good and all. But it's so weird. Mark and I were just talking about this, that, you know, in the span of, say, 5 days, we have consumer sentiment plunging to a low of 66.8, a 10-year low. And then, retail sales, they're up by 1.7%. It was a better than expected reading. Sales are up 16% from a year ago. Of course, part of that is inflation, because the retail sales, it's like the dollars spent. So obviously, if you are spending more money, that accounts for it, but it's not everything. And sales were pretty broad-based. So that was a good reading. And yet, so it's rising prices, or maybe it's worries about this. And it doesn't matter. People spend more money. Maybe you're going to spend more money, but I hope I don't have to report on it. What do you think, Mark? What's the likelihood they send the big mobile van out to me to do the retail sales Black Friday? What do you think? You think it's a yes? So don't drink too much on Thanksgiving, because I'll have to wake up early. I don't know. We'll see. Mark says not to alter my plans. All right, this is the program that takes the mystery out of your financial life. And I am Jill Schlesinger, he behind his brand new microphone. I thought the new microphone sounded pretty good, Mark. You were right. It did sound a little better. Did you notice a difference? Yeah, I thought that I sent Mark a new microphone. You're not hearing this because he's doesn't come on the mic for the radio show. If you want to hear Mark, you have to subscribe to our podcast called Eye on Money. And if you want to do that, just go to the Jill on Money website, jillonmoney.com. That is also the magic website where you can get everything Jill on Money, meaning you can get all the content. You can read the stuff that we write. You can listen to old shows. You can watch TV appearances. You can check out the resource section. And you can always click on the contact button and ask us your questions. That's what we love. So we encourage you to do that. All right, let me answer a question here. So this is from a Merrily, who writes, Merrily, we roll along. Okay, that's a little Sondheim reference. But Merrily writes that my husband passed away in September. Oh, that's so sad. He had a $250,000 life insurance policy through Jackson National Life. Okay, so here's the choice that Marily's been given. She said she can leave the money with them and it would earn 4% annually. All or part of the proceeds may be withdrawn at any time. Now, I don't need this money to live on. It seems like a good place to, quote, park my money. I listen to various finance shows, and I haven't heard this life insurance option discussed. Are there drawbacks that I'm missing? I don't think there are drawbacks, right, Mark? Because I guess it's just because the company has a very good fixed account. And obviously, if you need, if it is a good place to park cash, if you have a overall portfolio you wanted to add this to, I guess that's fine. But 4% guarantee is kind of the best you could imagine. Unless there's any sort of fees that are associated, maybe if there's a fat fee, I don't know, but it doesn't seem like a bad idea. What do you think, Mark? Yeah, if you don't need it, I mean, but let's, I guess you have to ask a couple of questions. Make sure you ask what are the expenses or fees, or, is there some time limit or anything like that, or any sort of lockup? That's what I would ask. And hopefully they're not somehow converting this into an annuity in any way, shape, or form. But let's just make sure we got the fees set and we go from there. Okay. John writes, this is another one. My 88-year-old mom recently lost her husband, and she moved into assisted living and sold her home. She has $45,000 in checking and savings. She receives $2,500 each month in Social Security. She has an IRA of about $10,000. She pays $3,200 per month for assisted living rent, plus $200 a month for food and expenses, etc. What should she do with the $347,000 in proceeds from the sale of the house? I mean, does she need any of this? You said that she's basically, let's just say $3,500 a month. She receives $2,500 a month in Social Security. So we know she needs $1,000 a month. So from these proceeds, I don't know. I wouldn't do much with it. I think I'd be pretty boring. I think I would probably maybe have like a whole bunch of money in cash, like 2 years of whatever you think she needs. So let's just say there's going to be, well, I'll round it up. So of 350, she needs 50 grand. I would put another 50 grand in checking and savings, or at least in a short-term CD. $300,000. I don't really want to invest it, Mark. What do you think? I know. I think at this stage you become ultra conservative. There's no real reason for you to go crazy investing. If there were, I don't know, if you really, really want to do anything, maybe you just build a CD ladder. Just go to depositaccounts.com and just, maybe stagger a few CDs in there. I wouldn't go crazy. I think that that's about all you could do. There doesn't seem to be a big reason to take risk. Doesn't seem to be a big reason to, go even like worrying about inflation or trying to keep pace with inflation. So I would really keep it simple. Here's a great, by the way, it's funny to open the show like this because it's two great questions that are essentially trying to understand, well, what is it that you should do? And sometimes the simplest solution is the best, which is, let's not complicate the matters by investing and going crazy. These are not situations potentially where you need to invest. Now, if there were a slightly different situation, or if it was a lot more money and there was maybe some desire to try to preserve this money for the next generation, or she wasn't touching the money anyway, but she's going to need this money. And maybe her care might increase as she gets older. You don't know. I don't know. I'm saying keep it simple. That's where I go. And in general, that is usually my mantra in life, to keep it simple, stupid, because it's a lot easier. Okay. KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. All right. Go to jillonmoney.com. That's our website. Click the contact button. And while you're on the website, you can actually subscribe to both of our podcasts. You can subscribe to Eye on Money, where Mark appears with me, and Jill on Money. Go check them out. It's a lot of fun. Shorter, and you get us on demand whenever you want us. Okay. Jill on Money 7 days a week. Eye on Money twice a week. 9 shows a week. We do 10 shows a week, Mark. We are really content whores. It's unbelievable. Okay, you're listening to Jill on Money, and we will be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and this is the show that tries to help you make the next best decision. Really, that would be a great goal in life. Don't go back and litigate the past. What's going on next? What can we do for you in the next iteration of your financial life? If you have a question, all you need to do is go to our website, jillonmoney.com. jillonmoney.com, and you click the contact button. Now, here's the cool part. If you want to come on the air with us, Mark can arrange it. And you kind of see how the sausage is made. It's fun. So if you want to ask your question and you're willing to come on the show, then all you need to do is let us know. Mark does the rest. And if you do appear, you will be broadcasting with us from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? Okay, so let's start with John, who's on the line from the Bay Area. Hey, John, what can we do for you?
Good morning, Jill and Mark. Thank you for taking my call this morning. I'm 60-ish years old, and I've got friends all around me who have retired. I've worked with people who are dropping like flies out of the job market. And
Don't say dropping like flies. That's a little scary to use these days,
out.
Right?
They are getting out. Yes, I hear you.
You too would like to drop like a fly?
Yes, I want to get out and travel. I love traveling. I've traveled a good amount, and I would like to do a lot more of it. I'm itching to go.
Tell us a little bit about yourself. Let's see if you can make your dream a reality.
All right. So let's see. I'm working. I've got a government position I've worked at for 35 years now. I'm divorced. I've got some monthly alimony that I pay for that. I've got an adult child. He's 26, independent on his own. I own some investment property, which supplies or helps me with my income. I say salary, $13,500 a month, and I got a pension that I'm collecting. That's about $2,100, a little over $2,100 a month, and some rental income. I gross $18,500 a month from that.
You gross. What do you think you net on that?
A little over, right around $7,100 monthly.
That's pretty good from the rental property alone.
Yes.
Wow. What kind of property is this?
Yeah, I own 6 properties total. 2 of them are fourplexes and 4 of them are single-family residents.
Wow. When you retire from your government job, like if you were to retire right now, what would the pension be?
I'm collecting a pension right now because places I worked previously, they've lost a contract. So I get a pension from them. That's $21.64 a month. I don't have a pension with the new management company. I have a 401k with them. If
you were to say, I'm out of here now, you would not get a pension from the current job.
Correct.
Okay. Tell us about what you've saved.
So in a traditional 401k, 403b, 457, I've got $1,050,000.
I like that. Okay. Keep going. Non-retirement?
Non-retirement, I've got like $60,000 in just a checking account, savings account, which is kind of my cash cushion.
What about your primary residence?
I just refinanced all of my properties. So right now my current residence is worth $1,300,000.
$1,300,000. And what's outstanding on the mortgage?
Mortgage is $348,000.
Okay. So you got plenty of equity in there. If you look at your spending right now, based on not travel, but your bills, your mortgage, and don't include the rental property stuff, right? Because I know that we already did the rental property numbers where I'm just going to make it nice and easy, $7,000 a month net, right? But what do you think you need to live on?
Well, I can tell you, I use Mint, so I track all my numbers. And
of course you do.
Yeah.
Love that.
So I'm positive net cash flow from all my income minus all my liabilities. I'm positive cash flow about $9,000 a month.
From your current job, you get $13,500 a month. Without your $13,500, you'd be break even. You could live on the $2,100 in the rental, right?
Right. So that's my concern. Go
Why?
ahead.
What's your concern?
Well, because if I'm going to retire, if I'm going to leave my job and that income won't be coming in anymore, that reduces my cash flow, my monthly cash flow quite a bit.
It's a shocking thing when you don't work, you don't have as much money coming in. Isn't that unbelievable?
I know.
Yeah, but you know what? So what? You really want to do, you're going to have to take a leap of faith one way or the other.
Yeah.
Here's some ideas. So you just refinance everything. You're not selling your primary. You're not doing anything like that, right?
Correct.
I think that it's fine. You probably can do it. It's very easy for you. How do I live on $9,000 a year, on $9,000 a month? That's it. Or $9,200 a month, because maybe you can do that. Maybe you can actually say hey, you know what? I pay my bills very easily and I can do a cheap vacation, or cheap travel. I can do something like that. You know what I mean? So I think you could do it. If you want a little bit more of a cushion, then you work an extra year or two and then you do it. Like, it's not that bad. How do you get health insurance in this period of time, though? What are we doing between 60 until you get to 65?
Well, that's a good question. I'll
Thank you.
have to go out of pocket for that, right?
Yeah,
I will from my previous employer. They supplement my health coverage, so it's not going to be too expensive for me.
that's
So
good.
that'll help.
Here's what I think you should do. If you really want to do this, you really get your head on straight about this. This is what I would do. I'd probably work for 2 more years. And I'll tell you why. Number one, I think that you need to save more money in cash. And frankly, it's almost like it's less important for you to put money into your retirement account. You need some cash. Like that 60 probably has to be closer, like probably double that, And I would like it if you said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to save up for my travels. Meaning you don't have to save everything, but like if you're looking at 110 grand a year and what you spend right now, and you want to put another 20 or 25 grand a year in for travel, then if that's the case, then save it. And I don't really think you need to save a ton more in your pre-tax retirement, especially in your traditional retirement accounts. If you really want to do this, you're going to have to forego the longer term saving, sock away money in a non-retirement account, have it set aside, and then you don't have to dip into those accounts early, and you have fewer years to finance the healthcare. I think I really would investigate that a bit more. I think you ought to approach this next phase like it were part of your job, in that you have to price it out. You have to look it forward. You have to say, what do I need? What are the different aspects of this? What am I going to do with my house? Am I going to rent my house? Am I going to let it be empty? Am I going to have my management company deal with the rental properties? Where, I really think you should put a game plan together, which is totally exciting. But I really think you need to build up your cash account. And I certainly wouldn't do it right now, post-COVID, because travel is nuts.
Yes.
You can't even go anywhere.
Yep, I know. That's very clear. I wouldn't be doing this now, but it's in my near future, I hope.
Right. So if you're 60-ish now, could you do it at, at your 60? When's your birthday? Let's what
October.
Month is it? October. So could
yeah.
it be 2 years from this October?
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be cool?
Because then I'd be collecting Social Security at that point.
I don't know if you need to collect Social Security early. I don't think you need to collect early, and I'd rather let the benefit grow.
Oh, all right.
So in other words, you could let it grow until at least your full retirement age. You got lots of income.
I appreciate that advice. That's nice.
You don't like the other advice?
No. I appreciate all your advice. Thank you so much. I really do. I thought that I was going to have to take Social Security at 60.
No. You got plenty of income. No, that's why I want you to work for a couple more years. I think what you should be doing for the next, let's call it 2 to 3 years. So we already talked about this. You got $9 grand a month extra. I want that $9 grand to go into your cash, into your kitty, right?
Yes. Yeah.
I want you to have that. So let's think about this for a second. Isn't it great to imagine that if you said that for the next 2 years, 2.5 years, you could sock away another $200,000 in your account, and that's going to finance your travels. That's what I would do.
That sounds good. I like that plan.
Okay, if you, like John, would like to come on the air with us, just go to JillOnMoney.com, click the contact button. JillOnMoney.com. While you're there, why don't you sign up for our free weekly newsletter? It's free, comes out every Friday, and it's fantastic. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here trying to answer your financial questions. And, here we go. We're coming into the end of the year, and we are going to have a great year-end show and lots of different fun things that you need to think about. But if at the end of the year, this starts to conjure up your notion of, am I on the right track, or what should I do next year to get back on track, or am I on track to do whatever you want to do next? And maybe you don't want to come on the program with us. Maybe you don't even want to write an email. Maybe you would like a professional analysis of just that, of how you're doing, well, in that case, I would encourage you to check out our sponsor, Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth provides financial planning to a whole different host of people. Whether you're 40 or 55 or 75, whatever you are, if you would like the kind of financial planning that is goal-based, if you want the kind of financial planning that comes from a dedicated, certified financial planner, not someone random in a call center, if you want to work with an organization that does not require a wealth or an account minimum, Facet could be a good match for you. So you can check out Facet Wealth at their website. It's facetwealth.com. All right. So where am I? Am I good? Yeah. Okay, good. I thought I must have ran over doing my little Facet Wealth business. If you want to come on the program with us, remember, it's just jillonmoney.com and you click the contact button. jillonmoney.com and hit the contact button. Yes, we have an email. Mark, does anyone really use the email address anymore? Should I say it or just stop saying it altogether? All right, click the contact button. We do have an email address. I'm not telling you what it is. Let's talk to our next listener. It is Sophia, who's on the line from Ohio. Hi, Sophia. What can we do for you?
Hi, Jill and Mark. It's so great to talk to you both today.
We are delighted to have you. So tell us what we can do for you.
I'm hoping I don't ruin the high percentage of people who have their financial act together that you seem to have as podcast guests, because I don't know. I'm sort of questioning where I stand with regard to my retirement investment planning, and I was hoping to get your expert opinion.
It is not a race. It is not a contest. This is all about just whatever's going on in your life. Maybe you're going to be the most interesting person that we talk to all week long. So let's find out what's up.
Okay, so I sort of hit that pivotal 50-year-old marker 2 years ago and sort of took a look at my investments for retirement and decided, okay, I think I need to do some self-education here. So sort of finding your podcast and your book and some other podcasts was part of that. And so I've been trying to focus more on let's actually have a strategy here. I was thinking I might just break down for you my stats and see what you think. Most of the retirement calculators I use seem to be telling me that while I'm not where I should be at this age, at 52, if I keep saving the way I am with the rate of return that I'm getting currently, then I will be fine. I'll have more than enough. So I'm hoping the calculators are true.
All right. Well, let's see what's going on. And by the way, those calculators, they are kind of made for the masses. So sometimes you're in better or worse shape than those calculators indicate. And if you're in worse shape, we'll help you figure out a game plan going forward. So, Sophia, how much do you earn?
Okay, so I got a big pay increase this year. So I am now at $100,000 salary with a $15,000 bonus each year.
Fantastic. That's great. And are you single, partnered, married?
I am single parenting a fur child.
A fur child. I love it. Fantastic.
I feel like they're legitimate. I feel like I should get tax credits for that.
Oh, I know. Oh, if only. Are you making retirement contributions based on that $115,000 total comp?
I am. For this year, it's the first year I'll have been able to max out my 401k contribution. So I am, putting 26% of my salary in there. And then I'm also contributing to a Roth IRA. I opened that up 2 years ago. So I've got $283,000 in the 401k and $16,500 in the Roth.
Okay. Do you have a Roth option at work?
I do, actually. Yeah, they just rolled that out maybe a year or two ago.
All right. So first of all, $100,000 salary, $15,000 bonus, maxing out with your catch-up contributions for your retirement account. Yeah, I do think that, frankly, using the Roth option is going to be beneficial for you. And so I would go ahead and do that for sure.
Okay.
Now, next thing, do you own or do you rent?
I am a renter. And
wait a second, how much do you pay in rent?
I'm paying $1,300. So not bad.
Great. I mean, that's the beauty of living in Ohio.
Definitely. I used to live in Chicago and it was definitely a different story.
What else is going on? Do you have an emergency reserve fund?
I do. It's I've got $10,000 in a CD that's maturing in February because it was hurting my soul to see how low the interest rate was in the savings account. So I was just let me put some of this in a CD for 1 year.
Okay.
And then I've got 15,000 in a high interest savings account. And then I've also got about $4,000 in my HSA, and my company puts $800 in that every year. And I'm planning this year, once they do open enrollment next month, I'm going to start contributing, pre-tax as well, maybe 1.5 to start, and then just adding to it until I hit that max.
That's great. What else you got?
A pension, so it's super teeny tiny. It's my company quit vesting, or they quit funding it. I want to say maybe 10 years ago. Mm-hmm. So it's going to be about $300 a month for the rest of my life if I retire at 67. So not a lot, but hey, every little bit helps.
Absolutely. Do you have any other folks that you are responsible for, whether it's parents or siblings, or besides your furry child, anyone else that you need to think about?
I don't yet. My sister, we have a pretty small family, but I do have my mom is in Birmingham, Alabama, and she has a lot of medical issues. And right now she's successfully aging in place. She's like 84, but I kind of trying to prepare for a time at which me and my sister may have to give an assist.
Okay. We can't really deal with it now. It's just good to know. We'll get back to Sophia in just a minute. Hey, during the break, hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com, and just bookmark it. You're going to want to go back there. So do it, jillonmoney.com. Okay, we'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to jillonmoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money. This is the program that attempts to take the mystery out of your financial life. I am Jill Schlesinger, CBS News business analyst, certified financial planner. The guy running all the mechanics of this show and keeping me on track is Mark Talercio, also a certified financial planner. And we're just trying to figure out how to help you get to the next place. Wherever that place is, you get to determine. So often you guys contact us, and I think there's this weird moment where you're sort of like, how am I doing? And you think you're going to compare yourself to someone else. And I hope if you've listened to this and taken anything away from the show, what you realize is it's just you. It's just you and what you want to do. And if you have an idea of kind of where you want to go, or maybe you're having a hard time figuring out how to prioritize, let us know. We can help you out. We really can. Just go to jillonmoney.com and click the contact button. Okay, let's get back to Sophia, who was on the line with us from Ohio. Let's finish her up. Your basic question now is what? Are you on track or not? Or how do you tell me a little bit about what some of those calculations found?
Sure. Yeah. I wanted to kind of get a sense of, kind of based on what I'm doing now, and maybe even what my 401k funding looks like. If it looks like I might be okay. I did pull my Social Security information. It looks like if I'm planning to retire at 67, which I am, that number's looking like $2,725 per month. But if I delay to 70, it would be $3,443. I'm currently only living on, I want to say, about $3,200 a month.
That's it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm saving about $1,000 to $1,500 a month post-tax. And then I'm contributing 33% of my salary to retirement accounts pre and post-tax. So I mean, it might be pretty good, but my 401k, I guess I'm a little surprised at how low the rate of return is.
Why?
Well, it's at 9%, around 9%. That seemed kind of a little bit sad.
What do you mean? That's good. Why is it 9%? That's awesome. Well, you're not 100% in stocks, are you?
I am not. I did a target retirement fund for both the 401k and the Roth. Since I'm not a big expert on what that should look like, I'm like, let me just get a target date fund and it'll have a good mix.
Yeah. I mean, look, you cannot be 100% in stocks. I mean, yes, the stock market is up about, let's just call it about 15% this year, but you don't have 100% of your money in stocks, thank God, because that way you're going to shield yourself from some of the downside. I think that that's perfectly reasonable to have that kind of allocation where you have some money in stocks, some money in bonds. And if you say, I don't really know what I'm doing or I don't want to have to deal with it, target date is fine. Where is the 401k held? What big organization?
Well, Principal is managing it, but it's called a BlackRock LifePath Index 2040.
Yep, that's cheap. That's cheap. I think that you should keep doing what you're doing. I love how much you're saving. You don't need to make 9% or 8%. You're going to make some years it's going to be like 12%. And some years it's going to be like 4%. And one year you're going to have a loser in there and you're going to be like, oh my God, this is horrible. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep maxing out that with you're over 50. Keep maxing out the 401k. Keep maxing out the Roth IRA. Keep putting money in savings. Get that HSA up. Don't even think that there's nothing more magical than you can do than help yourself by saving consistently into these plans. So I don't think that there is any issue, especially, by the way, you've got a very low cost of overhead. Now, I know what you're going to ask me because you wrote this in the email, so I'm just going to stop you right there. There's no need for you to buy a house.
Okay.
Absolutely no need for you to buy a house. First of all, at this point, the rents are probably going to be cheaper than any home that you could buy in carrying your home. But more importantly, I think that the use of your money in the way that you've been saving in these retirement accounts, in HSAs, it is just much more valuable to have that money working in that way. Life can change. If something came up, if you said to me, I got to move to Birmingham, you're going to be awfully happy you don't own a house. Or if you say, I want to be closer to my sister, you don't have the house. For some reason, like a house drops in your lap and you think it's reasonable, get back in touch with us. But for now, I love what you're doing and I think it's perfect. You don't ever have to feel like when you're listening to this, for other people who are listening to this, you are doing what you need to do for you. Whether someone else calls in and has $4 million or $4, it doesn't matter. This is what you are doing. You are on track, Sophia. I think you've done a very good job of kind of cranking up the savings and keep rolling forward. Mark, do you have other things to add to this? Because I think Sophia is kind of rocking it right now, right?
Yeah, I ran the numbers before on my calculator while you guys were talking. If you keep doing what you're doing and you plan on retiring at 67, that 401k is going to be worth well over $1 million if you keep doing what you're doing.
Mark, you got to keep yourself in on this podcast because I think people need to hear that. Listen to Mark. You're going to have $1 million saved. You're going to be on track. You're going to have Social Security. You're going to have pension. Again, if something changes between now and then, get in touch with us. But for now, I would like to wave the Jill Schlesinger and Mark Talercio fairy godmother and godfather wand and say, go forth and keep doing what you're doing. Okay, if you want to come on the air live with us, all you need to do is go to the website, which I know you bookmarked already, jillonmoney.com, click the contact button. We'll get your note. Tell us if you'd like to come on the air. Mark does the rest. We'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money. Mark is having all this work done in his apartment, in his bathroom, and there's like this massive drilling going on in the background. I just forced him to mute himself. You guys can't hear him and when he's on the air, but he talks to me and I hear all the ambient noise. So I actually feel like I'm getting work done in my apartment right now because of the noise in his apartment. So I feel bad for you, old man, but hopefully it's time limited. All right, before we conclude the hour, let's take another email here. This is from Bob, who wants to help his son start a Roth IRA. That's cool. Son is 21 years old. What's the best way to do that? This is an easy one. I love when you give me an easy one, Mark. Thank you. Well, the easiest thing to do is to select some company. I am agnostic on this. Until one of these guys sponsors me, I'm definitely agnostic. That when I say a company, I mean a company like, let's say, Schwab or Fidelity or Vanguard or TD Ameritrade or T. Rowe Price. And what you can do is you can open up an account and he can contribute based on the amount of income he earns in a given year. So hopefully he's got some earned income and he can put in up to $6,000 a year or the total amount that he has earned. So whichever's less. And he can just buy a couple index funds. Maybe he just buys a stock index fund and, maybe we'll say maybe you're being nice, maybe you're helping him out and starting it, but let's just pretend you put $6,000 in. You could put most of it in a stock index fund, a little bit in a bond index fund, but not a lot. He's just starting out. Or alternatively, you could choose a target date fund, but that's actually a little bit more expensive than just using plain old index funds. That's it. And once you do it, Bob, my suggestion is that you start to help him understand what he has. I mean, it's great to go through this process with him in order to help him understand his responsibility to it. So I really do recommend that as your sort of gateway into the world of saving and investing. It's a wonderful lesson for any parents out there who want to do this. Don't just put money in the account. Help the kid understand what's going in that account, why it's going in, and the power of what you're doing. All right? Makes sense? Great. Okay, we have a fantastic guest next hour. His name is, you ready for this name? It's great. You're going to want to stick around. Robin Wigglesworth. And he's got a fantastic accent. So stay tuned. We have Robin Wigglesworth. He's a Financial Times columnist, and he is an author. And we're going to talk about index funds. It's Jill on Money. JillOnMoney.com is a website. We'll be right back.
It's the weekend, and that can only mean one thing. You're listening to Jill on Money, the show that takes the mystery out of your finances. Here's your host, Jill Schlesinger.
You are back. It is Jill on Money, and we are here taking the mystery out of your financial life, and we've got a wonderful interview for you today. It is with Robin Wigglesworth. Great name. Maybe the best name of the year so far, right, Mark? That's a good name. Yeah, I don't think we're going to top that. Okay, who is Robin Wigglesworth? First of all, I knew his name because I am a subscriber and reader of the Financial Times, and he is the global finance correspondent at the Financial Times. Throughout his career, he's done a lot of different things, but he does tend to sort of look at the big trends, the kinds of trends that reshape markets and investing in general. And he writes these longer term features and cool profiles. And before he joined the Financial Times in 2008, he worked at Bloomberg News. I'm trying to think when I became a subscriber to the Financial Times. It was when I was still up in New England. So it's more than a dozen years ago, probably 15 years I've been subscribing to the Financial Times. I do love that paper. Also because it's really mostly one section. Fabulous, right? Okay, Robin is joining us to talk about his book. The book is called Trillions: How a Band of Wall Street Renegades Invented the Index Fund and Changed Finance Forever. So, without further ado, here is my interview with Robin Wigglesworth. I mean, look, you wrote a deep dive 300-page book about index funds. You must be some sort of, I don't know, maybe you're a glutton, or maybe you just were up constantly because you were having children. What was going on that made you write this book?
Yeah, well, I'm a financial journalist, so I'm immensely nerdy anyway. But for me, it was something I'd written a lot about for the Financial Times, like how this was changing markets. And it was one of those stories, the more I dug into it and the more I dug into the history of it, the more I realized just how monumental this was and how it's kind of arguably one of the biggest, least appreciated economic stories of our times. Because here you have this fantastic invention by a bunch of these kind of nobodies, or essentially widely hated by Wall Street, that saved people hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars.
And what's so fascinating is that I think people like me who come from the world of financial planning, investment management, I think that many of us went through a transformation that some of the characters in your book went through, which is you come out of a certain brand of, say, Wall Street, and you say, well, with enough research, you should be able to outperform an index. And we always compare ourselves with the index. And then you get to some moment in your life where you're like, actually, that doesn't work. The idea that you go back to around this is really grounded in research. So first, let's talk about what is this thing called the theory of speculation.
Well, so the theory of speculation was a PhD thesis by Louis Becquelier. And he was born in France. He was supposed to run his parents' vineyard and vintnery when they passed away too early. But he wanted to study in Sorbonne. So after running the family business and going into the French army, he went to the Sorbonne to study mathematics. But he had to work. So he worked at the French Stock Exchange at the time. This was the late 1800s, early 1900s. So he decided to write his PhD thesis on how stock market prices seem to move. And at the time, finance was a little bit grubby, right? Certainly in France. So people thought that this was a fairly unorthodox subject. But the theory of speculation that he wrote is kind of the wellspring from which I argue index funds sprung, because he was the first guy that showed mathematically that actually stock prices seem to move at random. And arguably, for every person that sells a stock, somebody's buying it for the same reason. So arguably at any given time, the market reflects what people think is the fair price. So this was the kernel of efficient markets.
I had always thought that the idea around index funds was sort of like the John Bogle of Vanguard brainchild. So this book was really so fascinating because you go back not just to the early 1900s, but then even in the 20th century, after the crash and I guess in the 30s, that there was a lot of research that was being done around whether or not people can predict the performance of a given stock or company. And was that something that you kind of knew, or is that something you stumbled upon in your research?
Well, it was something both, I'd say. I mean, Isaac Newton once said that, if he's seen further, then it's only by standing on the shoulders of giants. And Jack Bogle was undisputably a titan of the financial industry, but he definitely stood on the shoulders of some big giants. And it was a delight peeling back the onion, as it were. The more further you went back, you realized that people had kind of done some of this work here and there. But this is an era before rigorous data collection, long before the era of computers. It was really only in the 50s and 60s when people could actually calculate this and show it with cold, hard evidence that it really started to sink in, that people could basically show this is how the market does in the long run, and this is how well investment managers do in the long run. And you can see there's a bit of a gap there, and that was hard to explain away.
Whenever you had someone who brought this up, it is the person or the research is met with this huge pushback by the industry. Now, is that still going on today? I mean, there are still people, I think, who, even when I say, well, just buy the index, they'll be like, well, you know what? This person has beaten the market this many times, or this pension fund has done this many times. And so what is it about these outsiders that allows them to accept the information as presented rather than push back against it?
Well, I think it's a little bit just the fundamental issue that it's hard for incumbents to disrupt themselves. Kodak, did actually invent digital cameras. It did actually have a project on, but it just couldn't push through with this. Blockbusters had online streaming, kind of realized that this could become a thing, but just couldn't adapt or didn't want to adapt. And for Wall Street, this is a product that just is anathema to the whole ethos of Wall Street. I mean, really, the ethos of most people, right? Nobody wants to accept mediocre. I want to be a really good journalist. I want to be better than the next journalist. And that's how kind of humanity almost sort of walks forward. And index funds seems almost contrary to that. It's accepting mediocrity, as the former head of Fidelity once said. Who wants to be operated on by a mediocre surgeon? But investment management is one of those few areas of life where, like you say, it actually pays off empirically to be a little bit lazy and just index. And these criticisms come and go and have, yes, like you say, since the dawn of indexing. I mean, since even before the index fund was invented, people were attacking the very idea of it. And I don't think it's ever going to go away. There's always going to be some people that just see this as the enemy and will find something to object against.
We'll get back to Robin in just a second. During the break, hop onto our website, jillonmoney.com, and you can just always click the contact button and ask us your question. Maybe it's a question about index funds. Okay, we'll be right back.
Back to Jill on Money, where Jill Schlesinger helps you take the mystery out of your finances.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are here to take the mystery out of your financial life. And sometimes we are just here to entertain you with very interesting people. And sometimes those people are you guys asking your financial questions, and sometimes they are guests. Today, our guest is Robin Wigglesworth. Robin has written a book called Trillions: How a Band of Wall Street Renegades Invented the Index Fund and Changed Finance Forever. And I love index funds. Mark and I have always been very rah-rah around the index fund world. So this was a very cool title that came across our desks. I think that it's kind of neat to have someone who's done the deep dive and researched how the industry developed, but also why, in fact, index funds were such a game changer for investors like you and like me, just ordinary folks who want to do better with their money. So here is more of our interview with Robin Wigglesworth. So I'm just going to say that for myself, as someone who used to be a money manager, I remember in the 90s, I was managing a bunch of money for clients, and it was true that in the year 1999, early 2000, I sold out a bunch of technology companies and the trade worked. It was great, right? But it did take me too long to get back in. And that was my lesson, in that I can't actually time the market. Even if I had the right idea, I would have to execute two sides of this trade perfectly. And that is when I became much more of an adherent to the strategy of indexing. I guess that for me, because I was a money manager and a financial planner, I told myself this story of like, okay, well, if this is mathematically true and I am going to use that, then I can at least do this thing called financial planning. If you are just a straight up money manager, if you believe it's true, then your business is kaput. Right?
The mathematics around indexing are irrefutable. I mean, it is, the markets are it's a zero-sum game. And for everybody who does better than the market, somebody has to do worse. For everybody who sold the stock, somebody bought it, and vice versa. So no investment manager will ever argue that side of things. But their argument is that, well, we are obviously better than average, so we can do better in the long run. Like, we might have a year or a month or a quarter or even a couple of years where we do badly, but we're amazing and we can definitely time the market or find the best selection of securities or build the best portfolio. But like you say, I think most investors and most big, really successful investors have some sort of moment where they realize that the market is just immensely difficult and is getting harder to beat consistently. So I tend to think that the best, most consistently successful money managers that I've met and spoken to over the years are quite often the people that admit the most willingly the limits to their knowledge and how much stuff they can get wrong. Because frankly, like I said, with markets, you were right to sell tech stocks at that time, but maybe you should have waited another couple of months or bought in. I mean, these are the problems. Like, I have a lot of sympathy for asset managers because that job is just very darn hard. And we kind of need them to make markets, keep them a little bit efficient, but we probably don't need as many as we have around today.
When you hear someone who's running a big endowment, right? Like, remember the David Swensen from the Yale Endowment? He wrote that huge piece about like, you'll never beat the market because I have access to the best managers and you, the little peons, you have no access to that. How do you respond to that after doing all the research that you've done?
I kind of think it's true. I tend to say that the one thing that differentiates me a little bit from what I sometimes call the passive jihadists, the full-on efficient market zealots that say that anybody who's ever beaten the market, it is pure luck. Because in the long run, somebody's going to beat the market. Just in the long run, there are very few of them, and you can't identify them before time. I do think there are some people that, through the dint of the teams they've put together, have and probably will consistently beat the markets. But there are very few of them. They have capacity constraints, and they don't rent out their skill very cheaply. So a classic case is Renaissance Technologies, this huge computer-driven hedge fund started by Jim Simons. Their main hedge fund, they have others that investors dabble into, but like the sexiest flagship fund has been closed to anybody but those who work at Renaissance for over a decade now, because they you can't even get access to that. And if you look at all the top hedge funds in the world, that's Citadel or Millennium, they tend to be closed. They're not taking in new investors. And I think
then what is it that makes them able to beat the market? Is it the modeling? Is it the girth of the trade? I mean, what is it that you think can actually allow them to beat the market? And could that possibly be replicated for the masses?
Not for the masses, because fundamentally, as soon as something gets commoditized, it's a commodity. So there's an old quote that one of the pioneers of indexing, Jim Vertin at Wells Fargo, had pinned on his wall. There's none of us is as smart as all of us. And I think the best asset managers, whether it's of classic mutual fund groups like Capital Group, with its American funds, or T. Rowe Price, or hedge funds, I tend to find that it's people, process, and teams. Like, they have good culture and teams that work together, so they all become more than the sum of their parts. And they have good process. So you're not dependent on a single star manager, because like every era of Wall Street, as you well know, has had one or two managers that just look like absolute rock stars. Everything they touch turns to gold. And then at some point there's a market break and it all fizzles and it's revealed to be fool's gold, essentially. That they were just riding one particular strategy or trade that did well for a few years, or maybe even 10, 15 years. But inevitably the year comes out and they're revealed to be human, very human. That, I think, is the issue. You rely on, if you find a good asset manager with good culture, a good teamwork, and a good process, then I think you probably have a better shot than picking whoever is the hot fad of the day, whether it's like a Jerry Tsai back in the 60s or Bill Miller or Cathie Wood today, for example.
So if you were to give advice to someone who we actually get this question every so often, like, well, should I put money in Cathie Wood's fund? What's your answer to that? Is there a more mathematical answer to that? Because it does not appear that she has what you just described as essentially alpha, people, process, team. She's making a momentum trade, isn't she?
Kind of, yes. I think so. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. And it is interesting always seeing somebody do something a little bit different. And she's had phenomenal success. Yeah. But broadly, yes, every era has had a breakout style like that. And inevitably, they've crumbled. So I'm very wary of giving advice because, frankly, like, I talk to people a zillion times smarter than me all the time. And I see them screw up all the time as well. I quite often end up writing about their screw ups, right? So that's made me very humble about how much I know. And I'm always worried about saying, don't invest in X or invest in Y. And then 2 years later, somebody comes and complains. But broadly speaking, the only advice I feel very comfortable giving, just because it's backed up by centuries of data across every major market in the world, is that the vast majority of investors should index across the vast majority of the portfolio and just forget about it.
And not sweat it. And you know what else I always try to explain to people is that, your ability to save is probably going to be a bigger determining factor about reaching your goals rather than what you actually invest in once you do save. In other words, even if these are superstar investors and they swing big and they make over the course of how many, let's say 30 years of investing, maybe they do deliver a little bit more return. However, your ability to actually save money in your real life and get that money to work is actually probably the one thing you can control. So it is incumbent on people to hear this conversation and not say, oh, you see, all I have to do is index and sit on my ass. I actually have to save the money, put it away, and do it over and over and over again, and then I'll stay out of trouble and I should probably reach my goal. It's actually not that complicated. And I think that that's something that people just don't dwell on too much. Okay, now you know it. Indexes better than time in the market. Don't just take my word for it. Robin Wigglesworth, he did all the research to figure it out. Okay, it's Jill on Money. We'll get back to our interview just on the other side of this break. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of the show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are in the midst of a great interview with Robin Wigglesworth, the author of a new book called Trillions. We're talking about index funds. And in that last segment, we talked a lot about why indexing is really so far superior than anything else you can try to do out there. And, indexing has been a game changer. And there are other parts of the financial world that are also getting changed as we speak. And one of them is advice. And if you are seeking a new way, a game-changing way to find financial planning advice, I encourage you to check out our sponsor, Facet Wealth. Facet Wealth conducts goal-based financial planning. So it's very specific, and it is the planning that is based on you and your circumstances. They do this for a flat fee. There are no conflicts, and this is really opening up the field of financial planning to more and more people. So whether you're 35 or 55, whatever's going on in your life, go check out facetwealth.com, facetwealth.com. Okay, now we are going to turn back to our interview with Robin Wigglesworth, and we are about to talk about one of the legends of finance. You were able to spend some real quality time with Jack Bogle, right?
Yeah. Well, on my phone many times before he passed away, sadly.
Right. So, look, he definitely feels a little bit like a curmudgeon, and I can be that person. Can you explain, through your eyes at least, what you felt like his view was of sort of getting nudged out, and then also for Vanguard to go into the managed fund business, which seems like antithetical to what he built the company around?
It's a great question, just because I feel Jack Bogle is actually far more of a complex person and character than most people that might actually be very familiar with him think. He was not an indexing zealot. Certainly, like for a long time, when this was just an idea, there was some professors out on the West Coast that suggested the idea of an unmanaged fund. And at the time, he was a senior vice president, I think, at Wellington, an active fund manager. And he pseudonymously absolutely rubbished their idea. He said this was the dumbest thing he's ever heard, because all the major active managers do better in the long run. And even when he started an index fund, after he'd been fired by Wellington after a merger gone horrifically awry, that index fund was a pure corporate gambit. It was a corporate politics, in essence, where he wanted to somehow distance Vanguard, the company that was set up to handle the clerical work for the Wellington funds. He needed something to make that into a more independent issue. And an index fund, he claimed, was unmanaged, and therefore it didn't break its agreement with Wellington. But he didn't really care that much. It was a ploy. he didn't really fall in love with indexing until it started taking off in the 90s, really.
But then he gets pushed out.
Yeah, no, it's kind of a tragic story.
Yeah.
Because, he had groomed a phenomenal successor in Jack Brennan. Jack Brennan was interesting, that still has not talked to me or any journalist, as far as I can gather, since basically he left, about his falling out with Jack Bogle. But they had a real father-son relationship, and they were the yin to each other's yang, where Bogle was a grand strategist, loved talking to the press, was this larger-than-life character, while Brennan was just the master organizer. And then when Bogle's health started to fail, he gracefully handed the reins over to Jack Brennan, who'd kind of been running the ship, as Vanguard calls it, for quite a few years. But then Jack Bogle had a heart transplant, and he came back strong as an ox. And it seems kind of expecting that Brennan would hand the reins over to him. But Brennan and the board weren't that keen on that. So Bogle saw that as a betrayal by the board and people that he groomed to run the company. And they saw him as an inspirational founder CEO that was not the right person to take Vanguard on its next journey. I think, sadly, they were probably right. Like, Jack Bogle was just a phenomenal human being and a titanic figure in the history of American business. But Vanguard today would not be where it is if Jack Brennan hadn't been there already in the last years of Jack Bogle's illness and hadn't taken over the reins and then handed over to a successor of very able heirs after that. But the falling out was tragic and sad, and Brennan and Bogle never spoke and never made up.
I don't like that. We're going to have a happier story. Let's talk a little bit about exchange-traded funds, which is really the next iteration, I guess, of the indexing or the passive movement. The exchange-traded fund world, if you can try to boil it down for our listeners, explain a little bit about how this became something that was necessary or interesting to the folks who were trying to make this happen. In other words, if we're talking about passive investing, why do we care if someone can actually buy or sell something intraday?
No, it's a great question. I mean, the genesis of this is still, almost a little bit up for debate. But I kind of think that the birth of the ETF almost came out of desperation, a bit like the Vanguard 500 fund that Bogle started was just a ploy in his corporate jihad against his former partners at Wellington. The ETF was invented by the American Stock Exchange. So the Amex had a pretty healthy derivatives business, but it was basically just losing ground. And they needed a product. So Nate Most, who was the head of new products there, thought, well, hey, how about we take some index funds and make them traded on an exchange? People trade them throughout the day, because then, first of all, it helps distribution, because, this is like the internet might become a big thing at the time. And, you can just buy and sell them like you would a stock through your brokerage and so on. And some people can make different tradable index funds to build a broader portfolio. So he went to Vanguard, and Jack Bogle basically, they hit it off personally on a personal level, but Bogle basically chucked him out. He hates the idea of tradable index funds. So the Amex had to partner with State Street, and it took a long time because this was a novel product. And even though the SEC had kind of inadvertently called for something similar after the 1987 big sort of stock market crash, a product that would sit somehow between the actual stock market and the individual stocks and equity futures and some of the programmatic trading that had turned Black Monday into such a disaster. But even so, despite the SEC's tacit support, it still took many years for it to come through. And frankly, it didn't take off initially either.
We'll get back to Robin Wigglesworth in just a second. Hey, during the break, here's an idea. Go to the website, JillOnMoney.com, and check out our 2 podcasts, Jill on Money and I on Money. It's right there on the website, JillOnMoney.com. We'll be right back.
If you've missed any part of a show or want to check out a past show, go to JillOnMoney.com for more great personal finance content.
You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are continuing our interview with columnist from the Financial Times and author Robin Wigglesworth. You know, in these first few segments, we've been talking about index funds. The next permutation of the index fund is something called an exchange-traded fund. And Robin does a lot of research on the advent of exchange-traded funds and some of the upsides and some of the concerns that were originally thought about with these specific types of investments which trade intraday. So here is more of our interview with Robin Wigglesworth. I had a really funny conversation with a friend of mine who is vice chairman of a big bank. And he said, these ETFs are going to be the death of us. Everyone's going to pile up. All of your people listening, everyone with their passive investing, you're all going to be on the same side of the trade. It's going to screw up the markets. And you say that the test case for that fear came to pass in March of 2020. Can you explain that?
For most of us, March 2020 was obviously a very scary time because there was this global health crisis. And I think most of us are also aware that that snowballed very quickly into a global economic crisis as, we had basically had to shut down everything very, very quickly. I don't think a lot of people outside the finance industry realize or appreciate how close we came to, a triple crisis, a financial crisis on top of that. Because we ambled into March 2020 with, markets enjoying a very long post-financial crisis bull run. There'd been a lot of silly stuff happening, not quite 06, 07 silliness, but, quite a lot of dangerous stuff anyway. And a lot of people thought that ETFs and index funds have been warning that, well, in the next crisis, they will be tested. This will be the big stress test. And I think March 2020 was a phenomenally big and abrupt and painful stress test for the passive investing ecosystem. But I broadly think that actually it came out of it with far better grades than even I would have expected before the event, at least.
So the fear was that essentially everyone would be on the same side of the trade. People would bail out of their ETFs. The managers would have to then scramble to get up, and it would all lead to, essentially a run on the fund.
Yeah.
And it sounds to me, the way you describe it, is that it actually, the ETF structure worked as originally intended to, as like in between this world of the individual stocks, right? And the consumer?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, that was the genesis moment, the SEC report, SEC Treasury report into the market break, as they called it, of October 1987, that it was some sort of it would act as a buffer product. Ahead of March 2020, I was always a little bit skeptical of that. In that I thought, well, buffer product, it sounds cool, but in practice, markets move in weird ways, as we know, and certainly in times of stress, there are all sorts of fragilities that we'd never even suspected or thought of that always erupt. And let's just focus on bond ETFs, because that's where most of the issue or the fears particularly rely, because stocks trade all the time. Like Apple might drop 2, 3, 4, 5%, 10% in a day, but you're going to get a price for Apple stock. But a lot of bonds, especially corporate bonds, don't actually trade that much. The vast majority of corporate bonds basically trade maybe once or twice a week or a month. And some, a big chunk of bonds don't trade for an entire year sometimes. So people are worried that these ETFs that people had piled into, bond ETFs, that had grown to be almost like $1 trillion leading up to March 2020, that when basically everybody wanted money, they'd just dump the ETFs. The ETFs would have to sell bonds into a market that was basically frozen, and that would cause carnage. That you'd have forced selling, and it would spiral into basically just a complete collapse of credit markets. Now, I think the reason why it didn't happen, as some of the fearmongers predicted, is simply the fact that ETFs, and people miss this sometimes, have both a primary and a secondary market. So the secondary market is where you and I buy them. If I buy an ETF, I buy the shares of that ETF. And the primary market, where market makers like Spear and others, they create and redeem shares all the time to make sure that they track. Now, in March 2020, you just couldn't buy and sell. You couldn't sell a lot of the underlying bonds in the ETF. So people just traded the shares of the ETF. And the shares were obviously hit by a lot of selling, so they fell a lot. So there was this gap that opened up between the price of the ETF and the theoretical price of the bonds that it contained. And people thought this was an example of why things were breaking. I think it's actually a sign of them being a pressure release and actually being a fairer system or vehicle than a bond mutual fund. Because bond mutual funds have this run dynamic. Like if you're invested in a dodgy credit fund, like a junk bond fund, you want to pull your money out before the next person, because typically that fund will sell not what it wants, but what it can in a crisis. So the last people to go out of the fund are typically left with the crappiest, lowest rated credits. So the remaining creditors bear the risk and all the costs of the early exiters. So that creates a bank run dynamic. But with ETFs, if you want to sell the shares, yes, you do that, but you have to accept a discount. So the sellers, the people that want liquidity, they're the ones that have to pay the price for it, whilst the remainders in that ETF don't have to. So broadly speaking, I actually think credit ETFs, I'm sure this will come back to haunt me at some point, but they did well.
We'll get back to our interview with Robin Wigglesworth in just a second. You know, we're broadcasting live from the Capital One Bank virtual studios. Capital One, this is Banking Reimagined. What's in your wallet? See, I got it all in. All right, we'll be right back. You're back. It's Jill on Money, and we are coming up to the end of the program. I want to finish up with Robin Wigglesworth. I always like to ask people who do a lot of research about markets about what makes them a little bit nervous. So that's how we are concluding this interview. Here is the rest of our interview with Robin Wigglesworth. Before you go, what scares you now about risk in the marketplace?
I think interest rates are going to stay low for a very long time, and bond yields are going to stay low for a very long time for all sorts of secular, economic, and demographic reasons. But I think low interest rates and low bond yields is the foundation that all financial market prices are built on. And at the moment, things look very, very stretched. So I don't think it would take a lot of a bond market sell-off to echo quite violently through large swaths of the financial market system. So that is the major risk I think we should probably worry about.
Are you worried about inflation?
Not enormously. So I think it's a low probability event that we have sustained higher inflation for these demographic and economic reasons. I didn't go into, but like are still there. The reason why we've had low inflation for basically 2 decades. Whatever interest rates and financial markets and the economy has done. But so I think it's a low probability but high impact event. So let's say, I think it's probably less than it's 20% chance that inflation stays extremely high and accelerates from here, and that we have like a proper inflationary bout. But the damage that would cause would be astonishing. So that's why it is definitely something that I think, low probability, high impact fear of mine.
Okay, that's it. You got to check out the book. It's called Trillions by Robin Wigglesworth, How a Band of Wall Street Renegades Invented the Index Fund and Changed Finance Forever. Mark will link to it in our show notes. If you have a question for us about index funds or anything else, just hop onto the website, jillonmoney.com, and click the contact button. Our music is composed by Joel Goodman. Mark Talercio is our executive producer. Please try to do something nice for someone else today. Thank you for listening. Happy Thanksgiving, and we'll talk to you next week.